Welcome to the channel. My name is Crawford and this is Virginia's for Lowriders. We are back in the garage. We are working on the Ranger Lowrider build. If you haven't been here for the last 4 videos, quick summary. We're trying to make this truck go up and down aggressively. Little baby hopping, monster 3 wheels. We're doing it all from scratch. This is an extreme, really breaking down on how I would build something like this. We did a very similar build on a Mazda. It's bagged, body dropped. Only thing we got left is paint, but for whatever reason, A.d.d takes us astray, and I end up working on other things. So we have an entirely new project to build from scratch. We left off last week with some very depressing news that we found out inside of the engine, and I spent a very long time degunking the inside of the engine. I have it as far as I'm going to take it. I've been working on it all week. I've been trying to get out here every single day and get something done, while also getting over a cold and excuses and blah, 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 blah. But the engine is back together and it runs pretty decent. I had mentioned the fuel pressure regulator was bad, so I'm going to add a little clip in there. And if you see on the end of that, that is actually fuel coming out of the end of the fuel pressure regulator. And all of that fuel was going right back inside of the engine on the back 2 pistons, basically, on the driver's side. The reason I know that is because the exhaust on those 2 is a completely different color and would not get up to temperature like the rest of it because those cylinders are being completely flooded. And on top of all of that, all the spark plugs are fouled, bad wires, and so much gunk inside of the engine. But I think we're past it. I have a couple things that I have to address. We're going to make spark plug wires soon, so I'll show you all how to go about that. It's a very, very simple process if you've never done it before. But this week, like I've been trying to do for the last however many videos, we're getting the front frame rails wrapped. We need to get something lowrider based done on the truck rather than just taking parts off of it. We have everything cleared out. This is where we got to last week. We need to make templates and go basically from body mount to body mount. All of this needs to be plated. We need to do the sides, the top, the bottom, eventually the inside. I think I decided I'm not pulling the body off just yet. I'd like to do the truck in kind of phases. It's going to be a little mild and then slowly get more radical, and we'll cut it back apart and basically make it more aggressive and make it meaner and do crazier things. But in the initial build of the truck, we're going to do as much as we can. Basically this anybody can do within reason. This is a driveway, small garage build, because of course I got a tiny garage. Small garage, capable, without taking the body off, just the bed. We're going to do all of the things that you can get to, basically by maybe taking a body mount off, lifting the cab up, and welding and doing things like that, to show examples. And then later on down the road, a year from now, a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, eventually the body will come off, the frame will get turned upside down, we'll plate everything that you can do on it. But in the meantime, for the mild, semi-aggressive nature of what the truck is going to be, we just need to wrap the outside and everything that we can get to make sure that this thing doesn't fold in half and turn into a complete piece of poop. So, we decided on some wheels last week. We went through the brake system a couple videos ago. I still need to do the driver's side. I have been hyper focusing on the engine and trying to stick to that. I've been going through wiring all of this week. All of this stuff I've been trying to do off camera because it's pretty boring. It's boring to do. I can't imagine how boring it is to watch. In the engine bay, this thing was extremely crowded. I'll try and find some footage from the first video. It was packed up. Giant air box, giant coolant reservoir, giant everything. Everything was bulky and huge. And I have been going through and moving wiring harnesses. I relocated the coil. I've been going through and cleaning up harnesses and trying to get stuff tucked out of the way without going to the extreme as the Mazda. The Mazda is completely tucked, and the only thing you see is the spark plug wires and a throttle cable. Like, this is the very mild version of what we did to the Mazda. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. There's a lot of videos on that. I need to find a base model truck airbox. I'd like to do away with this massive airbox. That way there's no potential of hoses and cylinders and everything else making contact with it because it's clearly in the way. We're already going to have to redirect some heater hoses because it gets cold here. We're obviously in Virginia, and defrost is a must if I ever plan on driving this thing in any kind of inclement weather. So we need to keep all that while eliminating AC because, again, if you haven't seen the other videos, there's a ton of them, and there's a lot of stuff that was in the way from what we're trying to accomplish. But we got the wheel well cut out. We made room. We're getting significantly cleaner than it was. I made room on this wheel tub, so we're going to cut that tub out today. I got some harness stuff that I need to finish up. Probably going to have to go through the brakes on this, even though I really didn't want to. Probably going to end up having to make brake lines because there's no way that I can wrap the top of that frame rail with the brake lines in the way. And it kind of looks like the master cylinder might have been leaking at some point, judging by the rust. So it'd be another Rock Auto order to add to the 40 magnets we got up there. And yeah, if you've never been here before, make sure to do all the normal YouTube things. I'd appreciate it if you subscribed if you've never been here before. And we'll just get into it. I'm trying not to ramble, like I say every time, and it usually doesn't work out. But we're just going to jump straight into cutting metal, or cutting paper, cutting metal, and trying to slap some metal on some frame rails and seeing what we can get done. I dug out a bunch of cups and donuts and things that we need to go over because I got some ideas for this. I found a piece of 3/16. Like I said last video, I thought I had some 1/4 inch stuff. Turns out that was 3/8. I have a brand new sheet of 3/16, but I have this really bad habit of not using the stuff I already had and thinking, well, it's going to be easier if I just jump straight to the clean sheet metal and don't use the things that I already have that have a little bit of rust on them that I've been saving. Like this. This is really good metal. There's nothing wrong with it. It just has surface rust on it. No pitting. And the scale that comes on sheet metal needs to be taken off anyway for it to be welded properly. So it really doesn't matter. So we're going to get templates, transfer templates, cut the metal, and try and get something done. And I'm going to stop repeating myself, and we need to get to work because it's already like 6 o'clock on Saturday. And I try to post these on Sunday. So, yeah. We got the frame pretty well cleaned up. Everything down to raw metal. It doesn't have to be pretty. All of it's literally getting covered up. So raw metal is the game. Get rid of all the rust, all of the flakiness, all of the grime, just to have a good clean welding surface. Figured I'd take a moment to explain for the people that don't do this very often or have never done this and this is new to them exactly how this is supposed to work. I have some ideas to make it beefier and some ideas to basically just make it stronger. I'll explain a normal hydraulic setup as far as basically any car in the front. They're 90% of them are the same thing. It's a little different when you get into mini trucks, when you get into stuff that doesn't have a pocket from the factory, meaning like a spring pocket. Normal cars with A-arms still have a pocket, it's just recessed into the frame. So this scenario is the same idea as if this had a control arm above it at the same time. So keep that in mind, it still applies. First off, this is an old used chrome cylinder or stroke. There's other names. They're cylinders, but they all look the same. They're just different lengths. And then, of course, they get into the telescopic and all that stuff. But general term, cylinder, this would be, I think, a 12. Generally speaking, most cars in the front, you'd run either a 6 or an 8. Most suspensions in the front can't handle more than that pushing down on the suspension. The suspension literally can't travel that far. So this is not what I'm going to be running in here because that I-beam can't stretch, can't physically travel that much and keep the spring that I'm going to be running in the pocket and all of everything together. So there will be ways that we're going to limit the travel, but for demonstration purposes, we're just going to use a bigger one. We're going to swap it out for a good one. This one is just for mock-up purposes because it's trash. It's pretty rough. To keep the explanation hopefully pretty short, straight to the point. This is a cup. Cups come in various sizes. I have tons and tons of random shaped cups. Cups do different things. Cups have different purposes. They vary between the front and the back, but they all do exactly the same thing. So this is what's going to come in any hydraulic kit. This is a shallow cup. This bolts directly to the bottom of any cylinder with a single bolt. Very, very simple, straightforward. You have, this is an exaggerated spring. This is not something that you would normally get in any kit. This is like a 4 or a 5 ton. This is more reality. You can see the differences here. This would be like a 2 ton, maybe a ton and a half. The size difference or the girth, for lack of a better term, is clearly noticeable. So what I ordered for the truck is 2 tons for now, and I'll swap them out if I decide that I need more. But what you have here, this would sit in your lower control arm, any vehicle, I-beam, all the same concept. The spring sits on the bottom control arm, and it's held in there with either the pocket of the control arm itself, or in this case, I'm going to have something else welded onto the bottom of it, probably another cup. So the cylinder sits on top of the spring. Straightforward stuff here. The cylinder pushes down on the spring, pushing the control arm towards the ground and the frame up. To go along with your cylinder, you have these. These are called donuts. Donuts slip over top of the cylinder. You get this gap in between the two. This grabs a hold of the frame, so it would be any pocket that goes around this. This is actually resting on the pocket, which causes your lift. So this being forced down and this being forced up causes the lift of the vehicle. Not all of them are set up this way. This would be a coil under instead of a coil over. Coil over would be exactly like it sounds in any other car. It's another style of setting all of this up, which I don't know if this is long enough to do this, but in this scenario, try not to tip my table over here. Actually, let's just go with the big one. So this would be a coil over situation. This would go exactly like this, have coilover tops, which for some reason a lot of people don't buy and they just run a donut up there. But in this scenario, like we're running in the truck, any day of the week, this is exactly how it would be. You would remove the factory spring, you would slide this up through the existing hole with this exact setup. I'm going to do it a little bit different in hopes to make it stronger. And I'm going to explain all that as we go. I actually ordered some parts. They haven't shown up yet. They're supposed to be here on Monday. I was hoping I would time all that right, but you know how shipping is lately. It's like you order something and then you get, this is going to be delayed email over and over and over. And then it shows up 2 weeks later, even though it's supposed to be 3-day shipping. So, very straightforward. It'll make more sense once we start actually bolting stuff to the car. I'll try to mock all this up in there to where you can actually see what exactly we're trying to do here. So from the factory, there's a little cup thing that holds the spring down here. I'm not going to use that cup because it won't actually attach. It's actually this thing here. And what this does is it kind of clamps the pigtail of the spring in place. From a factory, it would clamp down here. That doesn't work in this scenario. So we have to come up with a way to keep this spring sort of attached to the bottom of the beam, or top of the beam, I should say. So this is another cup, just like the one we put on the bottom of the cylinder. This is just a really old, rough looking one that I'm using for mock-up. What I'm going to do is take some brand new cups, drill the centers out a little bit bigger to the bolt from this, from the factory, and actually slide these down over top of that, causing this little pocket. I might even buy deeper cups, but for the first iteration of this, we're going to go with shallows because I have some laying around. So we're going to drill this out. This will be bolted to the actual I-beam, and it won't be able to come off. So normal circumstances, donut will go over the cylinder. The cylinder would go into the pocket, like so. And the spring would sit over. The spring would sit underneath everything, just like that. This raises up. The donut gets caught on the pocket. The cylinder pushes down on the spring. This is an exact setup on how everybody would normally do this. I have an idea. What I would like to do, I've been thinking about this all week actually. So instead of running the donut, which these are pretty thick, they used to make them really thin back in the day for some reason. Over time, with this guy getting beat over and over and over into a pocket, doesn't matter what pocket it is from what vehicle, this thing will become deformed. It'll look like a potato chip by the time it's done. They just become a mangled mess. Luckily, they started making them thicker within the last 15 years. Before, it's like they would make them at a 3/16 or something, and they didn't last very long. So they would just get beat into this thing mercilessly over and over and become useless. I don't think that would necessarily happen with this. But what I would like to do, again, I ordered some more of these. This is a deep coilover cup, so it's actually recessed in here, meaning the cylinder slides inside of here. Apparently this is a fat cylinder. Alright, here's the same thing. It's just another shape, has a little bit of a dome. What this is supposed to do is basically stay in the spring. It's just a smoother one. They're meant to prevent squeaking and stuff. So with that being recessed like that, you can kind of see that it actually pulls the cylinder into it a little bit. What I would like to do with the brand new ones that I have coming is weld that inside of there. That way, instead of the little donut being flopped around and beaten on, it has this entire piece welded in here. So essentially this guy welded into that pocket. I figure I can weld it all the way around, top and bottom, and then plate on top and bottom and make this thing extremely beefy rather than just plating this and running that flimsy donut in there. That's the idea. I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to go ahead and make some templates and try and get some steel cut tonight because it's already getting pretty late. Taking off that rust and all that nasty stuff took way longer than I anticipated. Well, I gave up last night because I got into a coughing fit trying to get over this cold. But we are back out here. I said like 30 times, so we're going to make some templates. I've talked about this stuff before. I think this one specifically is, I guess it's called X-board. You can buy stuff called Ram board. This is temporary flooring for whenever you're doing like renovations of a house. Usually the big roll like this is like 50-ish bucks. A lot of the time it goes on sale for like 30 bucks. It lasts a really, really long time. I like it over top of like using normal cardboard as a choice because it's thinner. It kind of contours better and it doesn't do that weird like breaking wrinkly thing. It's just cardboard material, straightforward, in a big roll. I've had this roll for years. It lasts a very, very long time. Just cut off a chunk. So you can kind of mush it around. It will kind of crease along some edges, and then you could take that, draw a rough cut a little bit bigger than what you're going to need. I recommend, if you're planning on doing a lot of templates, get good scissors. Go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's. These are Wisp brand. It actually said on the package when I bought these that you can cut shingles with them. I don't know who would ever cut a shingle with a pair of scissors, but if they're selling me they can withstand cutting through an asphalt shingle, I think they'll last quite a while with some cardboard. And I've had them for a couple years now. They've held up pretty well. So, when you're doing this, what you want to try to do is get slightly below the edge. You don't want to run it. So you have to choose, I should say. Either you needed to run it all the way to the very top and weld that very top and then cap that top, or you need to do the opposite. Whenever the top's on there, you basically need to fill that void between the two. You don't want them to overlap, because if they overlap, you're not going to get good penetration between this panel and that panel. So you need to choose one. Either I'm going to run this all the way to the top and then make my top panel not go all the way to the edge. That way they could both be welded and biting in the frame, and then you can make another pass and weld them both together, and so on and so on. So what we're going to do is run this basically just to the top edge. That way the other one can be just a little bit shy. So I'm going to have to trim that a little bit. A rivet right there in the center. We're going to have to weld around. Have to cut that hole out. You want to make your template as good as possible because you don't want to mess up on the steel side of this. If your template is wobbly and you transfer that wobbly thing over, your sheet metal is going to be wobbly, and your end result is going to be not too good. I'd rather chase a straight line with the welder rather than trying to chase a squiggly piece of sheet metal. these are various brands, but you can get these off Amazon super cheap. These are just generic, like really strong refrigerator magnets. This is as straightforward as it goes. Try and waste the least amount of material as possible. Rather than trying to fumble with this thing and hold it in place to make sure you don't mess anything up, the little magnets does all the work for you. A little wax pen, pencil, whatever you want to consider this. Probably should have changed the color of the wax. I also have stones, but I just don't know where the box that I keep them in is, so that's why we're using this. Well, mid-cut, I had multiple friends come over, James and Mike and them, and we unloaded like 40 or 50 sheets of plywood. I don't even know how much it is. They're only half-inch thick, and they come out to 4 feet, so whatever that equals out to, that many sheets. So now that my back hurts and I don't feel like doing anything, we're going to get back to cutting because I am running out of time yet again. I ate lunch, and now I don't feel like doing anything. But we're back out here. This one fits pretty well. Got plenty of room to get a weld all the way around. Hopefully I can stick the welder down in there, weld the pocket to the thing at the same time as the frame. They're looking pretty good. They're usually, when you do this, absolute like best terms possible would be taking the cab off, taking all of the mounts off, completely wrapping the frame, and then putting the mounts back on. That's like top of the line. It doesn't get any better than that. We're doing in the garage stuff. We're not pulling the cab off yet. Like I said earlier, we're doing what we can, and we can always brace stuff later. We can always beef stuff up. The ultimate plan before the cab comes off, like I said, who knows when it's going to happen. I would like to lay underneath of it, and where I did miss and where I wasn't able to wrap the outside of it, like say where a body mount is, would at least like to plate that section for a foot or two or as long as I can. But it's a little complicated on a vehicle that's still assembled because you have fuel lines, brake lines, and all of the other things to go along with that. So this would be like the term partial wrap. Like my Caprice is partial wrapped. All of the key points, all of the stress points are wrapped. It's been wrapped for 4 years. I don't hop that car. It's just a lay and play thing. But it also has 8 batteries in the trunk and 2 pumps. So it's still heavy. It still goes up and down. It still does the lowrider things. It's just not aggressively. But no signs of any stress on that car whatsoever in the 4 years it's been together. Again, this is a different beast, different animal altogether. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm getting straight away again. I need to take this, transfer over the hole for that rivet. I should probably see what that rivet goes to, but I think it's a cross member of some sort. We're leaving it in there for now. Basically, we're going to make a hole a little bit bigger than it and then just weld all of it together at the same time. But that fits in there pretty good as it is, minus that. And then we're going to have to contour this with the persuasion of some, I don't even know where they are, hammers, clamps, and everything possible. I try not to put any heat in anything that I do when it comes to wrapping. You don't want to add a whole bunch of unnecessary heat into the metal if you don't have to. You're just weakening at that point. You're changing the temper of the steel. I know welding itself changes it, but trying to keep as minimal heat in the material as possible. I don't even, now that I have a bandsaw, the common practice is to cut all of this stuff out with a torch and then clean it with a grinder. I would like to do everything with the bandsaw possible and my metal cut and circular saw possible because it keeps the heat out of everything. And just a little bit of cleaning with the belt sander grinder just to clean up the saw blade marks to where it's a more of an even pass with the welder. And I'm rambling, so we're going to start drilling some stuff so we can get something done. It's already like 3 o'clock. Before we get into it, you hit everything on the back side with a little bit of weld through primer. That tip is messed up. Yeah. Extra protection because everything rusts in Virginia. It's just a matter of time. Doesn't take very long around here, especially I live sort of close to the Potomac, so you can definitely feel the moisture all the time. With that set up for a few seconds, we'll get this thing clamped on there and start buzzing some stuff together. Not the total amount of progress that I was hoping. Again, the rust grinding took way too long, and I worked on the engine for half the week or most of the week. But we got welding done. It's pretty exciting. I have some ideas, but I need those top cups to come in before I can finish that idea, because basically I need that to know my heights of how big to make everything. So I can't finish that up yet. But so far, trying to get to where this thing's not giving us a crazy glare here. That's looking pretty good. Nice and smooth and even. Usually whenever these get cut with a torch, it's kind of like jaggedy because people give up on grinding. That's pretty uniform. The front frame rail doesn't even look like it did anything to it. Ended up welding the plate to the frame, the rivet to the frame, and then everything together, and then metal finishing it smooth. So you can't even tell that I did anything. It just looks like a frame with no holes in it. This will all get metal finished and cleaned up, which I'm not grinding welds. The weld is still there. I'm just basically knocking down the face of it where it might have dug in a little bit more here or there and getting it ready for paint. But my idea to go along with that cup that I'm not positive, because it's a different brand that I've never purchased, how high that's going to sit. I won't know how high to make the sides. I want to cut this ear off and basically move this over to here and put my brake line back on without it attached to this pocket and kind of out of the way. I would like to run sheet metal, which I made a template and I have no idea where it went. A sheet metal straight back and then straight back here, welded along the sides, welded along here. I might do a cap across this after that the actual thing's in there and all of that's covered, and then plate on top, sides, everything. This, if ever has to come off, I would probably have to buy a new frame, because there's going to be so much weld and so much stuff going on that it's not going to come off. But all my welds look decent, not too hateful, good penetration, decent even lines. But yeah, that's again, we didn't get a whole lot done, but we got something done. That's the main thing here. I've been talking about it for weeks, about plating the front of this frame rail. Can't even talk today, and we've made that happen. The other side, still gotta do the brakes. Still gotta take all of it apart. I still gotta grind the rust and make the frame look nice. That one's a little weird. I'm gonna show you all that before we finish up today. I know this video's long, and I know I rambled a lot last weekend, but I felt like there's a lot I had to say for all of this to make sense, to where y'all didn't have to ask me a bunch of questions, and you just, if you had any questions, I hopefully answered them. And if not, if there's any questions that y'all ever have about anything that I do on this channel, don't hesitate to ask, because I do not mind. And you can ask a lot of my long time subscribers. You can message me on Facebook and we'll talk about some stuff. I'd perfectly fine with any of that. This side is a little weird. The frame actually goes in more for some reason. The other side, it's flat. I understand that the steering box is on the other side of that. I'm not sure why the pocket would need to be recessed into the frame further, but I need to come in here and trim all this out, clean all this up, and take all of this rusty, nasty junk apart. Because again, I found a guy that bolted brand new stuff to rusty garbage. It doesn't make any sense at all. And yeah, we're finally past me complaining about the engine, I think. Unless it blows up, which very well could happen the next time I start it, because gunk. I think that does it for this week. I'm going to go inside, finish editing this, take some NyQuil, and pass out. So I will see y'all next Sunday, and we're going to get some more stuff done. We're actually gaining momentum. I ordered probably more parts than I should have reasonably ever ordered for this truck. This truck has gotten really expensive really fast, because I kept telling myself, well, It'd be really cool if it had a better pump for the front. It'd be really cool if I ran number 8 lines instead of number 6s, and it'd be really cool. And then that turned into like a whole lot of orders. This initially was going to be just monoleafed and whatever things I had laying around, and that turned into me talking myself into a 3-link, an 11 gear, half-inch pump on, yeah, number 8 hoses, bigger lines, bigger fittings, bigger check valves. We aren't going like crazy stuff yet. Again, building in stages. I had to cut myself short there because I was getting carried away with the rambling again. I appreciate y'all watching. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, do all the normal YouTubey things. Don't hesitate to ask any questions. I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you next Sunday.